Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to look at some online tournament results once again. It's been a minute since we've done one of these videos with all the new card reveals and all the new rotation content, but it is still important to look at what's doing well in our current meta right now in the online tourneys. There are some cool decks I did want to highlight here. These are obviously all post Dortmund, which did have some cool results, and just any other like cool rogues we see do well on these online tourneys. It's always cool to highlight, and I wanted to kind of keep track as to what's doing good. Of course, Vancouver is on the way. Vancouver is very close. It's a month away now, so it's definitely coming up fast, and I definitely think that it's still important to look at our online tournament results right now and seeing what is doing good. I know a lot of people might be playing some decks right now because cards are rotating very soon, and people want to get their last little bit of reps in with said deck before they all go. Of course, I'll leave a link down below to Limitless here if you want to go check them out yourself. If you ever want to play in any of these online tournaments for yourself, you can definitely check it out down below. There's like a new tournament every day. And if you're new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below and leave a like in the video if you go on to enjoy. And let me know what you think of these decks down below from these tournaments. So starting these off here, we do have the first tournament to look at, and that is going to be the late night. Now, this was actually a tournament that happened last night during the maintenance they had, the surprise maintenance, because apparently there's like an infinite pack glitch or something, so they had to like emergency maintenance TCG Live to get it patched. But the late night tourney was interesting. It was won by a Mew VMAX deck. Now, of course, Mew VMAX is still good. I mean, Roaring Moon is popular and a very strong deck right now, but Mew VMAX is still a great deck all around. Even though Moon and even to a degree Gardevoir aren't the easiest matchups, Mew still just does Mew things and can win games. It is one of the most consistent and powerful decks in the format, despite a lot of dark Pokemon existing. And we do see the build here. That one was a fusion build, actually with some interesting inclusions. Trekking Shoes, a Roxanne over an Iono. Very interesting inclusion. No Box of Disaster in this Mew VMAX deck. So a bit of a different take on Mew VMAX, I guess, but definitely an interesting build. And Mew's not bad. I think a lot of people are playing Mew right now just because it is rotating. Mew is going to be leaving us very, very soon, so people might want to get their last bit of reps in. The second place deck was actually going to be the Snorlax control deck with Pidgeot and Chi-Yu, so a bit of a more creative way to play Snorlax. The Snorlax build did do decent in Dortmund, and is a deck that's picking up a little bit of steam. Could be a pretty good Snorlax archetype to play going into Vancouver. Even playing it for rotation could be good, too. You just kind of have everything still in the deck. Yeah, Snorlax control doing well is no surprise. Losing to Mew is not a surprise, though, because I do think that Snorlax does obviously have a pretty bad Mew matchup. Even when you play Spiritomb, obviously they did have to play against a Fusion build of Mew. There's another Fusion build of Mew here in top 4. Fusion Mew dominating. Actually, the same 60 got back to... Wow, that's interesting. The same 60 ended up getting of top 4 here. That's kind of cool. So 2 Mews in top 4 on the same 60, it looks like, with the Fusion build of Mew here. That's interesting. So that's kind of cool to see. We got a Guardian top 4 once again. Gardevoir just being Gardevoir right now. This one has Avery. It's got the Moonlit Hill. I think Avery's pretty fair right now. I mean, Shempao has seen a bit of a resurgence in popularity, and Avery obviously is very good against Shempao, which is a bit of a tougher one for Gardevoir when they have that Iron Hands and the Greninja Cologne. There was an Iron Valiant in the top 8 here. This one is looking like it's similar to the Entei Valiant deck we saw from Knoxville with the 1-1 Bibarel to help with consistency, making the deck a lot more stronger. Entei Valiant, I feel like, has now surpassed Rapid Strike in terms of, how good the deck is. Rapid Strike definitely has fallen off a lot, and that's just because the Roaring Moon matchup is pretty bad, and even, I feel like Rapid Strike's just been kind of getting figured out by now. I think Gardevoir with Moonlit Hill is also now a difficult matchup for Rapid Strike. Rapid Strike just seems to have gotten some new ops, and I do think that Entei Valiant has now surpassed Rapid Strike in terms of the better damage spread Yoga Loop style deck. And yeah, Entei Valiant's just good. It's not a bad deck right now. It does a lot of good things. I think the Bibarel has kind of fixed the deck's problems of consistency issues. There's a Lugia in top 4 or top 8 here. Now, Lugia does seem to be an online tourney deck for some reason. I know it just won the Champions League, and that's in the rotation, but if we're talking right now, I don't know how good Lugia really is, but Lugia is still getting these top 8s in these online tourneys. We see a colorless Lugia deck here in the top 8. Colorless Lugia doesn't really seem terrible. I mean, you still have, the Charizard with the Luminous Energy. The Snorlax seems good. I think one of the main traits about playing Lugia right now, it has a very good Giratina V-Star matchup. So if anybody wanted to play Lugia, I think the main selling point is that, yeah, it beats Giratina V-Star because you got Mew, you got Snorlax, Charizard's good. Yeah, Colorless Lugia doing well is interesting. We see the Drapion. I mean, we did see a couple of Mews in top 8. There's obviously the Iron Bundle in the deck, another big inclusion in this Lugia deck. I mean, yeah, it's cool to see Lugia still do well. I don't know how this translates to IRL play because obviously Lugia is a bit of a pile, and it does have a really bad Charizard matchup, so that's another thing that hurts it. There is another Lost Zone here to look at. We got ourselves a Lost Box deck. It looks like it's the Aiden Koos build with the Mawile, the Kyogre, the Dragonite. Yeah, it looks like it's very much the Aiden Koos build from Knoxville. Might even be the same 60, to be honest, judging from what's in there. The Mawile is really good. I mean, Mawile has kind of now been discovered, and people know about it. It's still just a very good card. Just having the presence of Mawile in your deck makes you play very differently, and that is always a good thing. We can see this build playing the double Sableye, which is very good because you have the Mawile in the deck, which, like, the opponent is now going to be scared of. And even though, like, Turo is obviously an issue, Mawile is just a very big presence to have in the deck. Just the idea of having Mawile in the deck just obviously makes a player play differently. And even when they have an out to Mawile, like a switch or something, it still obviously just makes them play differently. And it makes them have to play the matchup a bit different than how they would play when the Mawile's in there. And the Mawile is a very big threat. And then, of course, we had a Gholdengo in top 8. My boy Gholdengo playing at the double worker, or the triple worker double Avery. I don't hate that. I think Avery, you should probably play in Gholdengo now. I was not a fan of Avery in Knoxville when I played the deck, because, like, I feel like worker's just better. There's way too much Giratina, which, like, if you're playing 3 workers, it's, like, one less path bump to have, which ultimately can be bad. You still have 7 in the deck with 4 Pokestop, 3 worker. I mean, that's more than enough, obviously. But Avery, I think, is definitely something you should play in Gholdengo now. It's just a very good card. It does help your Guardy matchup, which is one of Gholdengo's hardest matchups. Also pretty good against Shempao, which can also be a 50-50. So yeah, it's cool to see. Next tournament, we got the Deck Out Monday tournament here to look at. The winning deck was a good old Giratina V-Star. Giratina just doing Giratina things, pretty much just like the simple Giratina list. But it did end up beating an Arc deck. It ended up beating Arc Leafeon here. Yeah, Arc Leafeon doesn't seem bad. It's got a good Charizard matchup. I mean, the problem with Arc is just ultimately your matchups are very, like, all over the place. Like, you have, like, a good Charizard matchup depending on the build of Arc you're playing. You probably have good matchups into, like, Mew and stuff because you have Tomb and Bulk with V-Guard energy. But then, like, your matchups, like, against Roaring Moon are pretty shaky. Obviously, your Tina matchup can be difficult, too. I think that ultimately Arc piles are just in a weird place right now. I like playing Arc, but they do seem to be in a very weird place. But the Arc Leafeon deck doing well is kind of cool. Leafeon does have a lot of power behind it. It does one-shot Charizard and Roaring Moon, and it also gets the ability to be very tanky. It does 180, and then you take 30 less damage. So you play the Leafeon, then you get a lot of bulk out of Leafeon, which is kind of cool. So, cool stuff to see. We got the Box of Disaster back in the deck. Minior in the deck's not a bad inclusion. I guess that does help against the... does it even help against Snorlax? I guess when you have Minior, it's not bad. There's no... Well, there's Skwovet Minior. Maybe that's how you beat Snorlax. You got the Skwovet Minior duo. We got a Miraidon here in top 4. We see a... well, it's Peony Miraidon, but with... Yeah, it's Peony Miraidon, I would say. It's got the Ionos in there. It's playing a Zapdos EX. That's the card we haven't seen in Miraidon in a while. Interesting stuff. Yeah, Miraidon's really good right now. I think Miraidon is a very strong play at the moment. Is it good in the online tourneys, or is it better in IRL? Depends on how much Gardevoir is in your area. But Miraidon just has a good Guardy matchup, and I think that's one of the main selling points. I wonder if Zapdos EX could be decent against Roaring Moon, where you can, like... They go Frenzy Gouging, and you can, like, go Zapdos, Gus Squawkabilly, then knock out the Roaring Moon and the Squawk and take 4 prizes. That actually could be low-key a good option right now against the Moon matchup. That's kind of cool. So Zapdos coming back is kind of sick. And, of course, speaking of Roaring Moon, there's one in top 4 here. Roaring Moon, it's a good deck right now. It's fast, aggressive. It's a deck that you have to be able to respond to right away, because if not, it can run you over very quickly. And there's a Cloth in top 8, good old Cloth, everyone's favorite meme deck that could. The Atticus is in the deck, just basically good upgrade to the deck. Just makes the deck even more consistent. Another Lost Zone in top 8. This one is another Lost Box pile deck's playing Iron Hand. It's got Raikou. It's got D-Knight in the deck, the Dragonite. And then it's also got the Drapion. Drapion's not a bad idea. Mew is popular right now, I think, and Mew should have a bit of a resurgence, even in Vancouver, because people are going to probably play Mew one last time. If Roaring Moon is on the downswing, Mew actually gets a lot better for Vancouver. And I think that Mew definitely will be popular in Vancouver, or we'll see a bit of an uptick in play. So Drapion doesn't seem bad in the Lost Zone. And then even Dragonite's rotating too. So if you want to, go out with a bang, this could be a decent Lost Zone deck to pick up here before they all go and rotate. Another Moon in top 8. Looks like it is the... Peony Moon. Ooh, that's kind of cool, actually. I don't think I've seen that before. Peony Roaring Moon is definitely a very interesting take on the Roaring Moon deck. So, Peony Miraidon is very good because you can Peony for double generator, Peony Roaring Moon is a very interesting concept. I like that. I might try that actually. That seems kind of cool because you can Peony for like Energy Switch and Dark Patch. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Peony Moon, definitely an interesting concept. Cool, and it did get top 8. Actually did pretty good. And there was, of course, good old Control in top 8 because Control's going to control. In online tourneys, Control's pretty good because I feel like online tourneys, like, I'm not saying there's less good players, but I just feel like online tourneys you can hit less experienced players who know how to play against Control as much as others, right? That's kind of why we see so many Control do well. We got the Pumpkin Amy tournament here. The winning deck was Roaring Moon once again. Pretty standard Moonless, but I did want to highlight the second place deck was the Gardevoir Mewtwo Union deck. I did a video on this deck here on the main channel a couple last weekend, and the deck's honestly a lot of fun to play. It's using Mewtwo Union, which you would think that Mewtwo Union wouldn't be great right now because, well, you don't have a good Zard matchup, you don't have a good Moon matchup. Well, you do have a good Zard and Moon matchup because you have Luxray, you have Shining Arcana Gardevoir, which is already good. Like, you just have Mewtwo Union for that extra bit of icing on top of the cake. Like, Mewtwo is a great way to finish the game off for 300 damage. It's a great attacker in any scenario. And even against Charizard and Moon, you just use it at the end of the game when you're winning the game. You don't just put it out into play randomly just to put it out into play. Guardian Mewtwo is definitely a really cool deck. Seeing it get second place is awesome. It is very setup based. Obviously, you rely heavily on Mirage Step. You're a bit of a slower paced deck. You're not really putting two prizes down. Like, you're not exactly playing the Gardevoir EX game as much as other Guardy decks are, because you are a lot of the time just smacking with reverse energy with either Luxray or Shining Arcana Gardevoir to get a bit of chip damage on the board to like clean up later with Mewtwo and stuff. But it is a cool deck nonetheless, and it did get second. It had to go through 2 Roaring Moon, or at least 1 Roaring Moon in the finals, which unfortunately Moon did win. Sometimes Moon can just run Guardy over and win the game. And we see 2 Moons here in the top 8 in the tourney. And then there was a Sablezard here in top 4. Sablezard's a great deck in my opinion. Very underrated deck. I just don't think it gets represented enough, and I think it's a very strong deck. There's a couple of ways to play it. You can play it with the Roaring Moon, or you can play the deck with kind of the one prize options we see here with the Charizard. Triple Cram's interesting. We see the Crisis Punch. I think that's one thing. If you want to play the single prize Sablezard deck, I really do think that Crisis Punch is a great addition to the deck, because now you have another late game attacking option that's not just Charizard, which is really cool. So definitely a big fan of Sablezard. Yeah, I love playing Sablezard. It's very fun to play. Got a Goldengo in top 8. This one's got my Milotic in the deck. Also playing a Judge. That's an interesting inclusion. We see Letter of Encouragement 2 in the deck. Interesting technology. There's another Lugia in top 8. Like I said, bro, Lugia just runs these online tourneys. This one is a Vessel Lugia deck here, playing Iron Hands and Shaman. There's a couple of hands in the deck, and there is that Shaman V. Shaman V is not terrible. It obviously has a great time into Charizard, which, like I said, is one of Lugia's toughest matchups. I guess like the idea against Charizard is if you aggressively push Iron Hands against them, Charizard can obviously go boss KO your Archeops, right? That's kind of the idea. That's why I think the matchup is bad, is because Charizard just goes boss Archeops. That's it. You can't get energy into play. Charizard runs you over. But when you have Iron Hands, you can basically force your opponent to have to counter the Iron Hands, because then you're just constantly doing Ampy very much and winning the game with boss's orders. So maybe that's how you can beat Charizard. Maybe the matchup isn't as bad as I thought it was. I don't know. I definitely want to try Vessel Lugia at some point down the road. But yeah, really cool stuff. I maybe would like to see a Charizard in the deck. That's really all I would like to see. But pretty solid deck, I guess. Pretty cool stuff. Love to see it. Got another Goldengo in top 8 here. This one, a bit more streamlined. The Double Avery, the Triple Worker. And in the other deck, we got a Mew VMAX in top 8. Looks like the standard Mew DT deck with the double Fusion Energy and the Sparkle for the Spiritomb. So cool stuff to see right there. Next up, we got the Redacted Paradox tournament here. I wanted to highlight that because we got a Roaring Moon deck as the victor. Pretty much just your standard Turbo Moonless. Not playing any Jelly is interesting, though. But does have a Vitality Band. Got a Guardy here in second place. Surprisingly enough, losing to Roaring Moon. But sometimes Roaring Moon, like I said, can just run anything over. If Guardy, prizes a Mirage Step, or they prize they prize Mirage Step, they prize a couple refinements, they get awkward prizing, they get awkward draws. That's ultimately what Guardy does. If Guardy doesn't have awkward draws and prizing, the deck's really good. But when it does, which I feel like happens at least 60-70% of the time, Gardevoir just kind of can sometimes play awkwardly and just fall in its face, even against a good matchup like Moon. Another Goldengo in top 4. Goldengo's really popular in the online tourney scene. I'm not surprised, though. It's a fun deck to play. Still a good deck. And then we got a Dialga deck here. Now, it looks like this is very similar to the Lost Zone Dialga deck. In fact, it looks like it's the same 60 as that Lost Zone Dialga deck from Dortmund. I did a video on this deck also. If you want to see gameplay with this deck in action, definitely go check out the main channel's video that I posted on it last week. Really cool deck. Getting top 4 is awesome to see. Dialga V-Star is a card you don't usually see very often. This deck is very strong, too, in my opinion. The Sableye, the Zam do give you some really good backup attackers alongside Dialga V-Star. If piloted correctly, this deck is a monster of a deck. It's really cool to see the deck still have some kind of performances outside of Dortmund Regionals, where it did end up getting top 4. There was another Lost Zone deck, of course, good old Giratina, just doing Giratina things. Now, interestingly enough, a deck I really wanted to highlight was this really interesting Cofagrigus deck. It's a Cofagrigus Espathra EX deck. Now, the idea of this deck is you're combining 2 really interesting attackers in one, and Espathra EX is a very cool card. I think a lot of people are really hyping Espathra up. Like, well, not hyping it up, but they really want Espathra to be good. Like, it's a card that, like, should be good, and I want it to be good. I'm a big fan of Espathra, but combine it with the Cofagrigus does make sense. Cofagrigus does have that Hollow Hands attack that does the effect of putting 5 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. Very strong effect when you're trying to set up damage. You can KO little Pokemon. And then you have the Espathra, which does help a lot against Charizard. That is one of Cofagrigus' biggest issues, is your Zard and Moon matchup are pretty shaky, but when you have the ability to play Espathra, you kind of fix the matchup a little bit. You do also have the TM Devo in the deck, too, which is nice against Charizard. Really cool stuff. Yeah, Espathra, Cofagrigus, really cool deck. And it is cool to see Cofagrigus and Espathra in a top 8 in an online tournament. Cool stuff, cool stuff. And of course, another Roaring Moon here in the top 8. And then in the rest of the top 8, to round things out, there's another Giratina, because Giratina does Giratina things, and it's just a very strong and powerful deck. Next tournament here, we got the Tournament of Doom, number 99. And the deck that won the tournament, surprisingly enough, was Palkia V-Star. Yeah, Palkia V-Star taking the dub. It is that Palkia Ice Rider deck, not Palkia Goldengo, not Palkia and Baxcalibur Shempao, just straight Palkia with Ice Rider. This deck is just kind of the dark horse of the format. You have to call it that because Ice Rider is literally a horse. But yeah, cool stuff. Nice 60 here. You got the one Pokestop in the deck to kind of help you get your items when you're playing Cross Switch or Cologne. You got the Shempao, the Ice Rider. Not a bad deck right now. I don't think Ice Rider Palkia is like terrible. It's definitely a deck you can play and do well with. It won a tournament. But you know what's even crazier? The finals was Dialga versus Palkia. Bro, you can't make that up. Dialga versus Palkia in the finals. Now, this is a Dialga deck. It is a Dialga Lost Zone deck. Not like the other build we looked at with Zam and stuff. It's actually playing a Roaring Moon in the deck, and I kind of like that idea. So, Roaring Moon, very strong card. We all know it sees a lot of play in the Lost Zone variants because you can Mirage Gate to it very easily and build it up in one turn, but you can also play Dialga with it. So you kind of have these 2 really big threatening attackers with Dialga Star Chronos and Roaring Moon, Friends of Galaxy. Really cool stuff. Dialga versus Palkia in the finals of that Doom tournament is actually just awesome to see. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this updated video, because seeing Dialga versus Palkia in the finals, bro, it's a thing of legends, bro. But yeah, Roaring Moon Dialga is a really cool idea. Again, different than the Zamazenta build we looked at earlier. And that's 2 Dialga decks in top 8, so that's kind of spicy. There's another Guardy here in top 4, because Guardy does Guardy things. And there's, of course, good old Mew. And this one is the double turbo Mew deck, playing Crushing Hammer, which is a very interesting inclusion, but not a bad idea. I mean, Crushing Hammer is a very strong card against a lot of decks right now. It could be really good in the mirror. Even against like decks like Tina, to slow them down a little bit, is very strong. Obviously, it's good into Arc decks. You can remove their V-Guard energy. Just removing energy in general is really good. Not going to be great in every matchup. Obviously, stuff like, Shempao, it's kind of useless. But in other matchups, it can go a long way. Even against Charizard, it can be very, very deadly, because Charizard, doesn't have a lot of energy in the deck. They usually play 6. Another Tina in top 8. We got another Moon in top 8. Once again, pretty standard Moon list here. We can move on to the next deck, which is, of course, good old Goldengo, the Cheese Stringer itself. And this one does have the Worker and the Irida, the one Roxanne. No boss, but yeah, just pretty simple little Goldengo list. No Avery either. And then we got another Sablezard here. I did want to highlight that, because Sablezard is just an awesome deck, and I love it. And this one does have that Crisis Punch in the deck, too. Like I said, Sablezard, very strong deck right now. Very underutilized, underrated deck in our current meta. And there is an Arcray deck I wanted to highlight outside the top 8 here. Arcray is coming off that really big boost from the... it wasn't Dortmund, was it? No, it wasn't Dortmund. It was a tournament before Dortmund. I forget what... it was a European tournament. I can't remember what the tournament before Dortmund was. But it is coming off the hype of that. It's cool to see it almost get top 8. It might have bubbled, actually. But yeah, the Arc Armor Rouge box deck is cool. There's a lot of Arc Armor Rouge decks that I've been seeing going around right now, even winning League Cups here in Canada. So yeah, dude, Arc Armor Rouge, bro, it's legit. It's definitely got some groundswell to it for sure. Cool stuff. Was it a bubble, actually? Now I'm curious. It was a 6-2. No, it was no bubble. Okay, they were the highest placing 6-2. All right, next up, finally, we got the next Battle Park tourney here. And there is an Arc-Ray in top 8 this time, which I did want to highlight. The deck that won the tournament was Snorlax. Yeah, everyone's favorite deck, good old Snorlax. But yeah, Snorlax just winning doesn't surprise me. It's a good deck, does the Snorlax things. Because it did end up beating a Gardevoir, which did not play Turo. So yeah, no surprise, Snorlax won. There's actually 2 Snorlaxes. There's one in top 4 and then one in the finals. Snorlax just dominated. This one here, a bit different than the other one. But yeah, Snorlax, yeah, the Guardy deck had no chance. And there was an Arc-Ray in top 4. Like I said, Arc-Ray's making moves, and this one playing a Mawile is kind of smart. I guess that's one of Arc-Ray's tougher matchups, is probably going to be the Guardy matchup. You do have the Delphox, but if you're playing open deckless, Gardevoir's obviously just going to bench Manaphy, and you're kind of screwed. The idea of playing Mawile, though, isn't terrible. Mawile is a good card to play in Arceus piles, because usually Arc piles do have access to Skwovet. This one doesn't play Skwovet, though, but the Mawile is definitely good to have against Gardevoir, and we saw the Gardevoir in the finals there didn't play a Turo, so it probably would have been screwed either way. Either they hit the Arc-Ray deck or they hit the Snorlax deck. So it's like, you pick your poison. But like I said, seeing Rayquaza actually have good results now is awesome to see, as, of course, the card is leaving very, very soon. There was the Lost Zone Kyogre deck here, also in top 8. This one does play in Iron Hands. It looks like it's very similar to the Aiden Kooslist from Knoxville, but it does have a Kyogre in the deck and an Iron Hands. Sorry, not Kyogre. It does have the Kyogre, but it does play the Iron Hands. Actually, probably subbing out the Jirachi for the Iron Hands, it looks like. So, yeah, Iron Hands really good, just very strong card. It might help more into Guardy. When you have Mawile and Iron Hands, it makes it very difficult for Guardy. There's a third Snorlax in top 8. Oh my god, that's crazy. This one is that Snorlax Pidgeot control deck. A bit different of a Snorlax deck, but seeing 2 Snorlax decks in top 8 is kind of wild, to be honest. Or 3, actually, it's just kind of wild. We've got another Goldengo here. Cool stuff. Avery Worker. Pretty simple Goldengo list. We got a Zard. This is the first Zard we looked at in today's video, and it was actually a different kind of Zard deck. It was Bibzard with Colress and Cramorant. That's kind of interesting. So, yeah, Zard Bib's definitely getting a lot of hype right now in Japan in the post-roll format. Right now, Zard Bib doesn't seem great, or doesn't seem as good as Pidgeysard. I think right now, we can all agree Pidgeysard is the best way to play Charizard. Pre-rotation, post-rotation, looks like Bibzard is looking pretty good, and maybe people are trying to get reps in. I mean, Bibzard, it's not terrible right now. I mean, Bibroll does help a little bit more in other matchups, over having the Pidgeot liability. It's just less, like, consistent and fast and as controllative of a game when you don't have access to Pidgeot. But you do play the Cram. Cram's not a bad one-prize attacker. You can, like, spit the opponent and then kind of clean up with Charizard. I like this list. The Cramorant definitely can provide some value as a one-prize attacker in the deck. The only difference is there's no Radiant Zard in this list, which is maybe something that should still be in the deck. But I think overall the Cram idea is definitely an interesting concept when playing the Bibzard. And there you go. Those are some online turn results. The highlights, Arc-Ray doing well. Really cool stuff to see. Dialga V-Star getting 2 top 8s in this video is also kind of cool. Dialga versus Palkia in the finals. 2 unique Dialga decks, the Dialga Zam Path deck, and then the Dialga Roaring Moon Lost Zone deck. So some really cool Dialga piles. And one other big deck I wanted to, of course, highlight was that really cool Cofagrigus Espathra deck here. So seeing Cofagrigus and Espathra in the top 8, definitely interesting to see. A lot of these decks could just be because people maybe are like bored of the format or just trying to play some cards before they rotate. Seeing obviously a lot more Mew. Obviously the Rayquaza deck, Rayquaza VMAX, is rotating. So maybe it's just more of just people just wanting to try different things. But it is still cool to see these like rogue gear decks do well in these online tourneys. And I think it's always cool to highlight these rogue decks and their potential in the meta. But yeah, that'll be for me on today's video here on the second channel. Like I said, I'll leave a link to play.limitless down below if you want to go play in any online turns yourself. Try them out. There's like a new tourney every day, and most of the time they're pretty free. So they're free. Not like they're easy, but they're free to enter. Thanks for watching. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like the video and subscribe down below if you're new. And I will catch you on another video here on the second channel. Bye-bye.